Hello and welcome back to the Security Conversations podcast. A guest appears today who's been a long time coming, Rob Ragan, principal architect and researcher at Bishop Fox. We've been trying to put this together for a long time. Welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
Thanks for having me. And yeah, sorry for always rescheduling on you.
That's all right. What is a principal architect and researcher, and what do you do at Bishop Fox?
I kind of do whatever I'm needed to do. It's a individual contributor. I don't have anyone that reports to me. I get to learn how to influence without authority, and I get to try to create value in whatever intersection there is of problems that interest me and that I feel like I can contribute to, along with what the business needs.
Are you focused heavily more on product side of things? Or are you still heavily focused on the services side of things? Is it more of like a kind of visionary role of
These days, I am really enjoying my role. I get to be a triforce between product. So there's product managers that are navigating the waters of what needs to be built. I also get to help with capabilities development, which is our R&D group, and they're building the coolest cutting edge new techniques for testing and inventing what I think is really the state of the art, and get to jump in the waters with them. And then I also spend a lot of time with customers, and I get to do solution building, like from a solution architecture perspective of customer has this interesting challenge or this complex set of needs. How should we approach this? Let's brainstorm some options. Or more recently, it's even been, they want to do something new or something that's never been done before, like testing LLM integrations, and they ask me to come help figure it out.
you've been in the trenches of pen testing, security assessment for the bulk of your career, dating back to, I don't want to age you too much, but the old Spy Dynamics days?
Yeah, I got my I've been in IT for 20 years, and was a professional software developer, and then security was a hobby for even longer than that. It was going to 2,600 meetups and finding like-minded folks in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I grew up. And then it was later that I found a professional career path and realized I could get paid. And even at first, I was a software engineer.
Right.
I worked on static analysis tools and on dynamic analysis tools at Spy Dynamics, which they got acquired by HP. It was also there that I got my first taste of penetration testing, and I was like, wait.
And penetration testing is like the perfect entry point to security industry because you get in to get an offensive take a look at code or look at products from an offensive eye. Uh, is that something you recommend a lot for folks trying to get into the industry? Is to getting through the offensive door versus going through the SOC thing? Is it something you think helped you?
There's no right or wrong way. I guess get in any way you can, but I do think that it helped me a lot to have done everything else first. I mean, I started in help desk, answering support tickets. I did network administration, system administration. I started debugging code that was doing like flat file processing for HIPAA requirements and for a healthcare company. And then I started making web apps and building web apps. And my first job, even at the offensive security company, product company at Spy Dynamics, was to make vulnerable web apps, to test our static analysis tool, to make sure that it found the vulns that it was supposed to find. And so I had to literally study and learn all the wrong ways to build a web app in every single way in .NET that you could create a SQL injection vulnerability. And that was also very valuable for like how that translated to my penetration testing skills later.
And the pen test and the security assessment industry kind of got commoditized over the years. It's been heavily a people business. The
Mm-hmm.
companies or the crews who could score the best talent at look searching and finding became, were better known for their work. So it's a people business that generally doesn't scale. I mean, I feel like over the years leading up to when we start to see it being productized or shops starting adding products to it, we had kind of stretched to the limit of where pen testing was from a people perspective. Is that a fair assessment? And can you talk a little bit about how the emergence of bug bounty programs and that entire ecosystem shaped where we are today with the pen test industry?
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. Let's go back. I guess the founders of Bishop Fox, they showed me this book that came from the inside of like Ernst and Young, which is where they cut their teeth in consulting, and it was how to run a pen test was basically this book, and at that point it was already decade plus old. Now it's several decades old,
Is this the how to
and
sell professional services?
this was specifically created by their team that was delivering
I
penetration
see.
tests at BNY. And so it was like, it was how to scope a pen test and how to like, you got to ask them how many IP addresses they have. And you got to like estimate how much time it's going to take based on that. And and it was basically how to plan out and how to scope and how to then deliver and the methodology for like a network pen
Right.
test. That evolved, but I don't think it evolved enough. And I still think there's a lot of innovation to be done in the space. I do think that I noticed this early on. I noticed that whenever a team or a company gets maybe like over 100 people, it's really, really hard to maintain quality. It's really hard to um, recruit and retain like the same caliber of talent and make sure that everyone cares about what really goes into a quality experience for customers. Not just a quality test. Like it doesn't matter what your hacking skills are. It means, do you care about the customer experience and their drivers and their outcomes and their success criteria? And you're gonna make mistakes along the way, but what are you gonna do to make it right? And I think that's how you build a high quality brand. Is it's how you recover from your mistakes and your not so great experiences with your customers. That sets the tone. And in order to scale that, it gets tricky. And I think that's why some of these other things showed up in the marketplace of like a bug bounty or a crowdsourced way of like, I can't wait 6 or 8 weeks for the top talent to be available. I need to get something done now, or I have 1,000 apps I need to test. I can't pay uh, 50 or $100,000 per app. I just don't have that much in my budget. And I think that's why the market created what it needed.
But that's a weird way of looking at it, that you're saying a pen test shop cannot grow beyond 100 and maintain quality. Is like what? Why do you think that's a tipping point? Is it just scaling? I don't understand why. Why do you feel that's the tipping point?
It was just what I observed at multiple places as I was an outsider looking in on some of them, and I also was an
Is it a
insider as I
structural
walked.
thing? Is it a structural or management thing? Is it something that can be fixed? I mean, because companies have to grow. I mean, people are investing
Definitely,
big monies into companies. Venture capitalists are investing into these companies. The idea is to scale it and grow it and become a 1,000-person company. If you can't
definitely,
maintain
and
any sort, if your quality eventually drifts as you grow, then you're having problems, right? What? How is that even fixable?
I think it is fixable, and I do think it is. And maybe it's not true for maybe I'm. This is just an opinion,
Right,
right?
right.
Maybe there are some shops out there that are figured that out, and but I definitely know that they would tell you they had some trials and tribulations along the way, and I think that actually running in cells or like groups that actually almost act like a smaller company. Like, so I used to lead our Atlanta pen test team, and I felt like I was running my own company, even though I had the parent company,
Right.
funding the whole thing, and then they were definitely the safety net. But for the most part, I was kind of had a lot of autonomy to run my team and run my small office the way I wanted, and that was great. It definitely had a lot of pros and cons, but it helped. I think it helped us kind of form our own culture of like what it means to do high quality work, and that was I think a big part of the recipe. As you maybe then you just have a bunch of 10 or 12 person teams that feel like they have a lot of autonomy and have like the principles and the values of what it means to deliver quality pen testing. but they have to navigate that water, and I'm sure they'll have their ups and downs along the way.
It's really the bug bounty programs and the emergence of the crowdsourced model has really been fascinating to me. Do you feel from your perch it's been a net positive to the industry? Bug bounty programs and the availability of additional eyeballs has been a net positive for the industry from a defender's perspective. And how do you view it affecting like the job market, where it creates employment for folks in places where perhaps those jobs would not have been available? How do you view the whole emergence of bug bounties?
I think absolutely it's been a net positive. Some of my really good friends, came into the industry and made a name for themselves, and made a lot of money for themselves as well, by focusing on disclosing vulns to companies and collecting a bounty along the way. And I absolutely think that it's been a net positive for businesses that navigate the consumption of that type of an approach really well, and have go into it with the expectations of the kind of resources they're going to need to fix these things in a timely manner, and they're going to probably get way more reports than they're used to getting. And I've been involved with our customers that need help triaging and need help making sense of all the reports, and need help weeding through some of the noise, and need help turning it into a quality written finding so that their engineering team can ultimately fix it in a timely manner, and know what fixing it entails. And um, I think that there are wildly different experience levels in who writes a report, and the quality of that report through those types of platforms. But I also think that there's people that are doing really innovative research and really innovative ways of finding bugs, and it's a great way to get exposed uh, to them if a company doesn't want to hire them like for some hourly
Right.
rate or fixed fee type project, but wants to be able to have a clean and easy way to receive information from them that is valuable and important, so that they can fix a vulnerability that they wouldn't have known about
Right.
otherwise, and except maybe a
And the
breach.
public image of bug bounties as individual hackers around just kind of poking at code is very, very different from the reality, where these guys have professionalized it and it's all been automated down to finding and reporting, because you have to get in first and you have to make sure you're first to report to get paid. Can you talk a little bit about how
Yeah.
much that driving that the competition in that space to be first and to report the high risk findings first has driven
Oh
innovation
yeah.
in ways that's been fascinating to watch?
Totally. And I've participated in bug bounties as well. Like in particular, like myself and some other folks teamed up to get. There's an airline that pays with miles, and we between the lot of us had like millions of miles, like 17.5 million miles, and I think I contributed like 3.5 of those million miles, just because they would pay you a million if you got a critical issue. And we were actually working in a team, and I think we did this because we played on each other's strengths. We were able to get more impact out of issues if we shared what we knew about the issue. Now this requires a lot of trust, because I know that um, whoever submits first gets paid first, and the others might be marked as a duplicate. So I think that there's this competitiveness between a lot of folks out there that they may not want to share information, but then they also form a close knit group of friends, I think, that they do trust and that they collaborate with and work together to have even more impact. And I think that's doing things in a team is always better than doing things alone, especially if you have a good team. And I think that it also incentivized people to create automation, to create things that were continuously working on finding issues while they were sleeping or
Right,
eating
right.
or
Yeah, I had Shubs on the podcast talking a lot about some of the automation that was came out of his own bug bounting while he would go to sleep to be scanning and searching. That eventually became the baseline for the product that he built a company around. Right.
love Shubs and love his passion and truly is a pioneer of continuous security. By continuous, we just mean higher frequency, and that frequency might be hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, but it might also be yearly in some cases. I mean, you're continuously having birthdays every year. I hope you keep doing that. The idea that we weren't able to this was a big thing that I think was broken and a problem with the traditional professional services approach to pen testing. People would only allocate budget to do it once a year, and once a year is not good enough, especially for the amount of change and tech that happens and the amount of change in any given company or any given app. Uh, Once a year does not cut it to have some experts try to break in. I think that there's a lot of people that invested in the type of infrastructure to be able to discover changes to an external network attack surface, and that then spawned off its own whole industry. There's open source projects that got funding and went on to go get acquired all in the span of like 18 or 24 months.
There's also been a dark side, and I'm trying to like help the audience understand how, someone like you view the contributions of the bug bounty world to the cybersecurity ecosystem as a whole. And a part of that is bug bounties have kind of introduced a lot of NDAs and put a lot of blockers in place for disclosure that would otherwise shift the power to a researcher having the ability to, hold a vendor accountable. I feel like that a bit of accountability is kind of gone away as well. And on top of that, we just touched a little bit on some of the you have to be raced for first and so on. And there's an argument that the industry feels abusive to researchers as well. Has that affected things at a macro level at all, or those are just small, minor hiccups that we'll just have to continue dealing with?
I'm not a lawyer, and I'm also not. I think there's probably, like you said, a darker side of some things that have not gone so well, but there's probably also some benefits. I'll try to be optimistic, and there's probably things that got disclosed and got fixed that 2 decades ago would have never even seen the light of day, or if someone would have tried to do the same thing and reported it, they would have had the FBI called on them. So I do think that there's also things that we've seen not go so well that have been swept under the blanket of bug bounty that probably were just breaches and probably were just incidents that you probably shouldn't lie to the government about. Yeah, I guess I say that to say I think we're still learning and still adapting, and as long as we keep innovating on the approach, then that's the only way we're going to get
You
better.
mentioned continuous, and continuous is kind of the basis for this attack surface management category that's emerged to describe productization of pen testing and the ability to do attack surface management and attack surface discovery as one of that baseline foundational things. You can't protect what you don't know, so let me help you tell you what you have. Even if you just know what you have and where it's sitting around, that's value, right? That's valuable information.
Mhm.
Are we there yet? Is attack surface management solving our problems?
I think it's definitely improved. I think one of the other big problems that needed to be solved with traditional point in time testing was, and this goes all the way back to that playbook from decades ago of how to scope a pen test. And you had to ask the customer, what are your IP ranges? And with modern infrastructure, modern
That's an
tech stacks,
impossibility. Yeah.
cloud, it's impossible, and it's dynamic, and it changes every hour sometimes for some companies, and they just don't know. And so I think one of the most important things that the attack surface management industry set out to address was, I'll tell you what your attack surface is, and I'll keep it up to date for you continuously, because you don't stand a chance of filling out a scoping survey that asks you what your IP addresses are and getting it remotely accurate. And the attackers are going to use the same OSINT techniques that the attack surface management products use to do a better job of mapping out how they're going to get an initial access vector and break in. So we need to adopt those same techniques as we plan our testing efforts.
How does that address attack surface when identity is the attack is when identities become the
It,
valuable asset? Can you talk a little bit about how you view
it's
this
only
future
one,
of attack surface
yeah.
management?
It's only one part of the overall picture, and I always refer back to like the Verizon data breach reports, and they would map out all the categories of how people would get breached. And
It's basically
I
four
always
or
thought
five
that,
ways, right?
yeah, it's like seven, I think, if at least how I categorize it in my own mind. It was like, and the things that attack service management can focus on are missing patches. So there's, you have like a new CVE, and you got to get it patched, and we might not do that in a timely fashion, and some opportunistic attacker might scan the internet and find that and add you to their botnet. It might be a misconfiguration. It might be just some cloud misconfig that's like a leaky bucket of data that is exposing stuff
And
that
someone is
should be
scanning looking for that as
sensitive.
well. Just
Sure.
so the audience understands. Like every time you talk about this, expose something, there is an adversary actively, continuously scanning looking for those as well.
And that officer might be a bot, like someone that's running a bot that is literally assigned to do that one thing to every IPv4 address on the entire internet, and or everything in AWS. Yeah, so then a sensitive info leak might be another type of issue. It might be like an app vuln as well. It might be like a server-side request forgery, or it might be something that is even on the unauthenticated app attack surface, a way to exploit with like an OWASP top 10 level app vuln that leads to the initial breach. And then lastly, it was weak password, default passwords, easily guessable passwords, passwords that came from another breach. And that might be a way that someone gets a foothold. Then the two that I don't think attack surface management products do even attempt to address typically, but that also lead to breaches are phishing and malware. And that's where I think like red teaming type of efforts are much better at helping organizations practice against practice defending against those types of
When
attacks.
you and I read reports of scattered spider and the calm and these so-called teenage hackers who are causing major damage, wreaking havoc across using like SIM swapping and basic social engineering techniques, does that surprise you at all?
It's the most effective tool in the toolbox. And I also think like the bribing employees, messaging them on LinkedIn and saying like, "Hey, I'll give you $500 if you
How do you defend
give
that
me
though? I mean, how
your."
do you defend that when that is the actual that those are the actual live attacks we're facing?
Honestly, if you were my customer and you were legitimately asking me that question, I would suggest that we plan to write down a playbook tailored to your organization that specifically addresses those exact attacks. If it's something that we're definitely worried because it maybe has already happened to us and we don't want it to happen again, or it's happened to our peers, or we think on a long enough timeline it's going to happen. So let's write down a playbook that helps us prepare to defend against it, and let's work on what policies, processes, and technical controls we can put in place to mitigate the risk. And I prefer to focus on the technical controls.
And what does that look like? A lot of MFA, put MFA wherever you can. Like, can you talk a little bit about
It
what,
might
like,
be, it might,
especially for this SIM swapping, social engineering, getting into the help desk, or grabbing credentials from one breach and bouncing across to another breach? Can you talk a little bit about some of the controls that should be top of mind for
sure.
security programs today?
It might be following principles of least privilege from a policy perspective, and looking at like, do all of your executives really need access to all of your production data? Probably not. Do your engineers need access to things that should be private that are customer data? Probably not. Is there a way for them to still do their job using like differential privacy techniques, or using synthetic data, or using things that they can still do whatever they need to do, but they don't like. We basically reduce the attack surface is still, I think, one of the best pieces of advice that anyone can adopt if they're in charge of securing an organization. You take away all the users that have access to our most sensitive data, and we only have a couple of accounts and a couple of ways, and it's not just MFA everywhere. It's going to be like, you can create these choke points, and you can create ways to detect that something abnormal is happening, or preferably prevent that thing happens. But you have to tailor that to your exact organization. There's no generic product you can buy that's going to accomplish this for you. There's no generic incident response plan that's going to accomplish this for you. You need to I probably recommend you start with tabletop exercises so that you can practice who on your team is going to do what in this situation, and what did we put in place to help save us from this event, and then eventually practice live fire exercises of playing it out with a red team, actually executing those attacks as much as possible. There's certain things that are illegal that are tricky to do in practice, but you can simulate most aspects of these types of attacks, and then you can practice, just like you're sparring. If you do like martial arts, like you practice for the fight that you're going to be in, so that it's muscle memory, and you actually can recover well in the face of a real attack.
I always ask this of guys who do pen test, red team, or any sort of offensive work. When you go into an organization from day one, do you know exactly where you're going to start and exactly where weak points are just from looking at the scoping document? Or does it take a long time
Sometimes.
to like, well, what's the typical engagement look like? And I'm trying to get to the point of like, where are the common weak spots that you're always running into and you know, okay, let me just start there because I'm going
Totally.
to get in right there.
Totally. I definitely had kickoff calls where a customer showed me like a demo of an app and said, "We don't think you're going to get in." And I was like, "I already saw 3 or 4 issues." But I've also, of course, there are playbooks that the attackers run that are pretty safe bets on getting success from an attacker's point of view. But we do like to start out, especially in a red team, building an architecture diagram, if one doesn't already exist, or maybe we make a tailor-made one that is putting all the different components of all the different systems and the players and the people and the things that we want to focus our attention on. And then we'll often build an attack graph where we're actually outlining the scenarios of these are the starting states of threat actors and the end goals of those same threat actors. And this is the paths that we can take to get there. And these are the controls we expect to face or we did face. And we can often work with our customers to get a sense of priority of they're like, you know what, of the like 5 or 6 scenarios that we just brainstormed, let's prioritize these three because I think we'll get the most value from these three, but let's save those other ones for later. Or I just don't think that that's a good use of our time right now. And so, but then at that point, we're trying to surprise the blue team, or we're often trying to have them experience something that they haven't before to see how well they handle it. And of course, there's just tried and true pivoting techniques and tools and tricks of the trade that work. We even maintain like a list of passwords from breaches that we have in a big table way to query
Right.
really quickly and say like, give me every password that anyone that's ever had an email address at this domain ever had lost in a breach and the plain text password of it. And then we'll use that to like password spray some endpoints, and often like someone reuse their password and it works to get us an initial foothold, or at least know that we now have a valid set of credentials. Maybe it triggered some MFA or something like that. But yeah, there's things that work almost
And on the
everything.
flip side, what makes a good blue team when you're caught by blue? What are they using
Mm,
constantly to catch you? What makes a good blue team?
Without going into like any particular products or things like that, things it's just that they have a really good plan, and I feel like that they are trained. Often sometimes we run into teams that bought every product under the sun. They put millions of dollars of investment into their SOC and
And set up trick
have every
points and a lot
tool.
of tools. I mean,
Yeah, every tool that's on the vendor floor at
which
every
was my next
conference,
question.
but
I was gonna and let me you can maybe you can bake it into your answer here, right? Security is very expensive. Good security is not cheap. But can good security be purchased? Can a company with its unlimited resources and access to everything, if I give a CISO unlimited resources, go buy everything and put every control in place and make it work? Is that even attainable?
it's not that's not going to just magically achieve good security, because what we end up seeing happens is they spent millions on every product in their SOC, but they don't know how to use it, or they're not using it properly, or they don't use it to its full capability. They have things set to log an alert that they should have had set to prevent, because there's no legit reason that should ever happen on their network. They had things kind of fail safely is a lot of times, and often even like we've done so many social engineering engagements over the years. I do think that there's a lot of opportunity for technical controls to mitigate the risk of social engineering being successful, but I've never seen a company like I have this like list of like 12 controls of things that I think could really make it a pain in the ass to spearfish someone. I've never seen one company have all of those in place. I've only ever seen one of those work in catching us and slowing us down, but I've never seen one company have all of those like as a well-oiled machine in tune working together. And I think that if folks And also, like, there's not one set of things that is going to work at every company, because different companies have different tolerance. Like, especially, like, I was try to talk a lot of our customers out of buying physical pen tests from us, because it's like, you don't have the culture to have like full body turnstiles, or like man trap entry points to your office. Like, now maybe you do at your data center, but like, you don't have the culture to have like the security that it takes to prevent tailgating, or to have things in place that would actually mitigate the risk of a physical breach. But we can often, find things that are opportunities for improvement, but not every company has the culture that wants to have all these controls in place, because security inevitably always sacrifices
Sticking
usability.
on products here, is there, or, and I know you guys take a vendor neutral and a product neutral approach to your recommendations and stuff, but are there like point products that you actually see and like? You mentioned, you mentioned blue teams with good products in place to catch you. Maybe not necessarily products, but what are some categories you like?
I am a big fan of.
What would you buy? You're a defender. What would you be focused on buying as a priority?
I don't think I should. I don't think I'm very good at defense. I may have a lot of opinions on it, but I don't actually know that I have enough experience to have say that I know what to do. But if I had to, I'm a big fan of deception technology. I'm a big fan of like,
Things Canary and like what Haroon is doing over there.
yeah, things like that. I think they really are effective, and I think anytime there's been a trap laid, like, oh, here's some credentials or an AWS key laying around in this text file. Of course, I want to go try and use it as an attacker. Of course, I want to like see what it has access to, and if that's a honey token, like, boom, you just detected someone on your network. I think those things. I think there's a lot of opportunity to innovate on that. If I were trying to defend something, I would probably set up a bunch of traps to try to catch an attacker doing something that they shouldn't be able
Right.
to
As
do.
an industry, we've kind of settled on this EDR world of assume breach, store and log all the things, and we'll do detection and response later on, and we'll kind of mitigate risk that way. Is that something that's sustainable?
No, I think that we have to be more proactive. I think that the industry is obsessed with indicators of compromise, but if I uh, had the ability to make like a wish and have it come true, I wish that the industry would shift to focusing more on indicators of vulnerability,
What does that
because
mean?
so an indicator of compromise is something already happened, and it looks like we've been breached on this host, and the EDR detected that there's this malware now, and there's behaviors, heuristics that show that someone's looting this box for credentials and going to use that to pivot. The opposite end of the spectrum is an indicator of exposure. That is what you get out of like a vulnerability scanner. That is what you get out of like something saying, "Hey, this is out here. It looks like it might not be an up-to-date version. It looks like it might need some patches. It might have this CVE, but I'm not really sure." And that's noise. And a lot of people get overwhelmed in that noise of indicators of exposure. Indicators of vulnerability to me are somewhere in between. It's what a pen tester is looking for. It's what a red teamer is looking for. It's what a real threat actor is looking for if they're trying to hack into a target system. It is a stronger signal than an indicator of exposure, but we're not waiting until it's an indicator of compromise. It's something that you can use to kind of anticipate that, like, this is the highest impact spot, this is the weakest link, this is where I should focus my attention first. And in a lot of the automation that we've built for our team, we've tried to surface these indicators of vulnerability so that we can serve them up to an expert operator on a silver platter and be like, you should break in here. And the first time I saw this work was with a very large company that's like in the food supply industry, and we had already mapped out their attack surface and loaded into our platform, and we already had basically they said, break in any way you can from our outside external network, uh, open scope. Anything that you find that you are confident is ours, go for it. And we had a kickoff call in the morning, and then by right after lunch, we had a shell. And we had run our analysis. We found the indicator of vulnerability of a particular Java issue that lets us do deserialization attack and get remote code execution. We popped the shell. We uploaded a web shell. We like started looting the box. And to me, like, that used to take us like 2 people 2 weeks to find, because we'd have to like we run our nmap scans. We got to run our like this, and we got to like map everything out. Like that would take a long time, but with enough automation, it was like kickoff call, boom, we're in. and then we can skip to the fun part, which was like post exploitation and exploring the impact and looking for other issues. But that was like so cool. And I think if more companies focused on hunting for indicators of vulnerability, and at least for the highest impact things, of the ways that are most likely to get breached, they'd be a lot better off than just waiting until there's an indicator of compromise.
One thing I'm starting to hear from CISOs is this drive to consolidate tools. I really can't. There's no way I can manage this plethora of vendors and this plethora of tools that I need over here. I'll just go consolidate things. And what's ended up happening is that they're like eventually ended up in Microsoft's E5 licensing or some sort of Microsoft licensing shop. And that's, I mean, from a management and a budgeting perspective, it kind of makes sense. Is that can you confirm that that's what you're seeing your clients kind of driving and making decisions based on just simplification of management?
Yeah, we heard a lot from our customers. We don't want another product. We don't, and here was why. They didn't want another product because that was another thing that they had to maintain usage of. They had to train someone up on. They had to tune and configure and properly. And guess what ended up happening? Like the person they had to budget cuts, and they had to like let go of some of their team, and then that person that was running that tool and was trained up on it and was maintaining usage of it they're gone now, or they got a better job after 18 or 24 months. They got poached and recruited. They got paid more because they were really talented in something talent shortage. What ended up happening then is that product sits on the shelf and no one uses it. And I can't tell you how many times, even like the head of red team at my friend, she's a head of red team at a company, and they have like one of the most elaborate SOC build outs in existence. She's like, oh yeah, we have that product. It just sits on one of the screens in the SOC and no one knows what to do with it next, or no one has time to do anything with it next. So we're not really getting a whole lot of value out of it. I don't think people understand the total cost of ownership of having someone on your team have to actually use these
So
tools.
consolidation is a big is the answer. But what
I
happens when you trust your vendor to be your security vendor, and the hen is watching the hen house, and you can't rely on your cloud provider to ship something out of the box, or because you have these configuration issues? Like, where are we heading?
I think we're heading towards, and it's a thesis that we have. So I'm biased, but I think it is a correct thesis that building a tech-enabled managed service that takes a group of experts and leverages them more than you could if it were, a traditional model. And enable them with automation. Not saying completely automate their job. I'm saying automate the tedious parts, the boring parts, the parts that would, degrade consistency and efficiency. I think then something that's missing from most managed service providers is transparency. Most people that consume these don't really know what they're doing. So I think that we need to build products as part of that managed service experience where the customer has as much transparency as they want at any given time. Some days they might want more, some days they might want less. Don't overwhelm them with a bunch of noise, but give them the ability to peel back the curtain if they so choose and go deep on what happened over the last week or month or quarter. But maybe, give them the pane of glass that is the roll up and the summary of just what they need to know in any given day, unless they want to know more. Which is very hard to build and design, but I think that's the direction that we should go.
I don't know why we're all wasting our time, because if we listen to big tech today, AI is going to save us all. Microsoft is building a
Oh
cyber
yeah.
defense AI shield for the world, and like every announcement comes out, it's like this revolutionary leapfrog thing that's
Mhm.
really going to save the world. Let's level set. How bullish are you on AI?
I'm very bullish. I'm very optimistic and very trying to remain pragmatic and meet it where it's at today. Keep the things that are a fantasy for tomorrow still a fantasy for tomorrow until they're not, until they're the reality of today, until tomorrow gets here. I think that what I just described.
Yeah, sounded very much like AI.
Well, yeah, you can do it without AI. And I mean, we at Bishop Fox, like our first offensive AI demo was at like DEF CON in 2016. We like made a neural network that could do SQL injection and had no idea what, had no strings of what to do for SQL injection commands like a typical tool would. It just knew what the patterns looked like and knew what the end result should be. And it taught itself how to do SQL injection. And we were doing that, years ago at this point. We never used it in production because it wasn't better than having just one of our professionals use a traditional tool that we already had.
Right.
That there definitely have been leaps and bounds improvements, and especially with generative AI, and especially with being able to prompt an AI that can write its own code from scratch and have agency over how to solve the problem and keep iterating, and also not sleeping or eating or taking bio breaks, and just churning out on this problem until it gets the desired outcome. And you might be a human in the loop, giving it more context to steer in the right direction. I have done quite a bit of experimentation with this, and I am very bullish on our ability to automate the tedious tasks, amplify the human expertise. And I think what we'll be doing over the next few years is building a bridge between what the machine does and what the human does, making them better at complementing each other. The CEO of Grammarly said is something that has been ringing in my head. He said, we should stop calling it artificial intelligence and we should start just calling it augmenting intelligence, because you get into this whole like is it conscious stuff if you start talking about artificial intelligence, and honestly, who cares? But that's not true. I care. But what we're really talking about is augmenting our ability. So I think that we'll see a lot of investment in
Is
that.
it already making us 10 times smarter and 10 times more efficient? Today, with what we have, the use cases we have today with generative AI bots and co-pilots and some of the things you described, because that's the thing, right? The idea is it's not going AI is not going to fix everything. It's not going to replace us. It's going to make us smarter and a lot more efficient. What we have today, are we starting to head in that direction?
I think so, and I absolutely think so, and I think especially if people are trained on how to use it better, there's evidence that they do it even better. They get even higher quality output for whatever
Right. The
task they're trying
magic
to
becomes
perform.
prompt engineering, right? Like the best prompt engineers become the better users and you get the better outcomes.
Sure, that's part of it. I don't think that's all of it, but there is something to like. When I often use it, I love to put like rather than using like a zero shot prompt, I like to use these techniques of like chain of thought or activating like the latent space of the model to almost put it in like a consultative mode. And I've been using this algorithm that I've recently learned about called a Basher loop, where your prompt and your code and the way you interact with the model, you tell it, don't just blurt out the first answer. That don't like that's almost like how like if I were to ask you something right now, you might just go with your gut and blurt out an answer. And that's kind of what like simple prompting does to in these chatbots. But if you
If you tell me to sleep on it tonight,
yeah, if I told you like slow down, like I don't need your answer right away. This is a tough task. Like let's really think about this, and I want you to like brainstorm, hypothesize, search, and maybe search. Go out to the internet and do some searching and some reading. Ingest that into your context window, and then refine your answer and print out all the questions you asked yourself along the way. Give me transparency into like why and you answered what you did and how you solved this problem, and then I'll have more confidence that I even trust that I
right?
got a valid answer. This technique is much superior, and there's all kind of other algorithms that researchers are publishing where they're creating a council of different LLMs that have different expertise, and then like an overlord that's like delegating tasks to them, kind of like a middle manager,
Right.
and then it like assigns different tasks, and then it aggregates the result, and it kind of decides if it accomplished the task. This even showed these algorithms showed a much better performance on things like crossword puzzles, which are kind of tricky. Like the New York Times crossword puzzle is pretty tricky, and to have a bot be able to do that, it was able to do it better with using these algorithms.
Is it really leapfrog for security? Like, what? Where does it make the most sense today, and where you see it being used and makes the most sense today?
I do think it is. I think it's a leap. It's a leapfrog for everything. It's like electricity. It's not
Really, you're that bullish?
useful. I do think it is an inflection point in technology that is on the scale of the internet itself, definitely more so than cloud, maybe even industrial revolution. Because like what we just saw in the last year was someone just built the best user interface for an algorithm that already existed that anyone had ever seen. And then we saw fire get lit under all of the major tech companies and a fire in the open source community to innovate on this. And we're seeing an immense amount of time and energy go into making this more usable and more capable. And at the end of the day, it's just a tool, but in the same way that like electricity is a tool. And I think that in security, every single task is up for optimization.
What's the most What's the most incredible, amazing security use case you've seen today?
I'll just go with like some things that gave me chills
Yeah.
when I did it. It was stuff that it was just tasks that I had done in the past, Like I have this technique for like go out to Shodan or go out to all the sources of internet scan data. Go get me every instance of this particular technology. Go exploit. Go see if any are vulnerable to this misconfiguration, and then download the sensitive information if it is, and then search through that sensitive information for secrets. And that used to take me so much time to do manually. And
Right.
whenever I used AutoGen to the Microsoft framework for, which is, it's like a combination. Imagine it's like a chatbot meets something that can write its own code, can write code from scratch to solve tasks, combined with something that reflects on itself and says like, did I achieve the task? Did the code not work? I will go debug it until it does work. And then I will ask my human operator to give me feedback on if I'm close to achieving what they asked me to do. And I basically took that task that used to take me so much time to do manually and got the bot to do it.
Right.
And I was like, wow. And I'm also like, I'm just so fascinated when I'm using things like Copilot now. I'm like, how much of my life did I spend trying to find that missing curly bracket or that like syntax error in the code
Right.
that,
It's impossible to go back to the old days once you've had co-pilot
yeah,
turn on.
I'm just like tab completing. Like I was following along with a YouTube video on how to build some things with AI, and I was able to like, used to have to like pause, go back, rewatch, because I like to type it out with them so that I learn and remember. But I was able to like basically auto or Copilot tab complete as this person was talking and tweak a few things, and then have a working proof of concept of that code in 10 minutes. And like, there's been so many things that even the other day I was in a meeting and we were talking about new visualizations for product, and I just asked ChatGPT to make me, what are some good visualizations for this topic. Go make me the code to render those in a browser, and then just populate them with data, sample data for like application security testing. And it did. And I was like, I went from idea to 10 minutes later having a charts and graphs to tell a story of like, what if we did it like this? Like that feels like a superpower to me.
Yeah, ChatGPT gives people like real superpowers, and the rate of innovation and the rate of new features being added to ChatGPT that makes you open your eyes and go wow all over again almost on a daily basis suggests to us that where this is going is not a let's look at out 5 years where we are. Like you have to look out a year to try to like see how, because it's moving so fast. So let's look out a year, what kinds of use cases and things you see coming down the pike. Like you mentioned, this is leapfrog. Where are we going? Where is this? Where is AI and security taking us?
It's definitely a superpower. I can't draw, but I can generate art now. I can't make music, but I can generate music now. I have a lot of ideas, but I don't feel like I'm a very good writer, but I can
You can write
get
now.
a draft. I can write, I can draft, and then I can also like change my tone. I can change my orientation. I can change like things that like would have taken me countless hours to manually drudge through. I've been doing like creative writing exercises, like so. Definitely given me the feeling of having superpowers that I didn't have last year. And to where we're going next, I've been going back and rewatching a lot of sci-fi movies. I went
Just
back
try
and
to figure
rewatched.
out what
Yeah,
applies, right?
Blade Runner 2049 is only a couple of decades away, and maybe they need to move that up to Blade Runner 2029. It's, and then I'm trying to think like which is our ideal dystopian future or ideal sci-fi future. Actually, I was talking to someone about that, and we decided Firefly is our ideal outcome. We'll just go be space pirates, and we'll all speak Mandarin and English, and yeah, just we'll have to just worry about what planet we're going to go colonize, and watch out for space pirates.
The obvious question to wrap it all up is safeguarding the models. There's a lot of discussion around like how do we safeguard these models and attacks against the models. How, when you look at it from an adversarial lens, what are realistic attacks today against the model, and how worried should we be about this stuff?
I think it's overhyped. I think like these models are trained on data that's on the internet, and that means if you're worried about extracting some information from it, that information is already on the internet. And some like, and I was reflecting on how like the Unabomber taught himself how to make bombs. He didn't have ChatGPT.
May not have even
Uh,
had the internet.
he didn't have the
He was
internet.
living in a barn somewhere, right?
He was finding books and manuals and doing experiments and figuring it out. And he was that motivated to do it. And if that's your threat actor, it doesn't matter if they have ChatGPT or not, they're going to figure it out. I do think that a big topic that we're going to have to focus on is transparency and explainability. If
Yes.
we're going to use these tools, we're going to rely on them. We need to know how they arrived at the decision that they did. We need to know, we need to explain, like, even might want to understand things like who funded this model, who built this model, who maintains this model, what data went into this model, what biases might it have. There's talk of doing like nutrition style labels on
Yeah,
models
but
to
who
be like this.
polices that? We leave the vendors to police that themselves? Are we looking for government to intercede and have regulations be put in place? Is that inevitable?
The user and the consumer is going to have to watch what they eat,
Right.
first and foremost. Like, I don't trust the government to do a good job of this, at least in the initial
But
phase. I
they'll
don't
have to
trust the.
regulate it in some way.
I hope that they do it in a way that doesn't stifle innovation in the private market. And then another thing that I think is really important is that I hope that we don't dissuade people that are building these things to bring them to developing countries as soon as possible and help the rest of the world level up and not get left in the
Yeah.
dust. I think that whatever policies the government makes should encourage us to take these technologies to places so that they can start embracing a world where they exist sooner rather than later.
Let's leave it right there. That's a great way to end it. Thank you very much, Rob. Appreciate the time. Thank you for coming on and sharing your work with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.